is Malik Gonzalez.
I'm Naima Brew.
I'm Grady Abel.
I'm Garrett Cardi.
And today we're going to be talking about the implications of a low minimum wage in the U.S.
Raising the minimum wage in the U.S. will make it so that citizens will be able to combat the rising cost of living prices in places like California, Texas, and New York. Another pro of raising the minimum wage is raising the national minimum wage to $15 will bring the United States above the poverty line, which is $15,650 annually, making places more affordable for the average person. And here you can see the graph where it's the price of a Big Mac throughout the United States through the year 2000 to 2016. This shows how much the Big Mac has raised in prices due to the inflation of the state. Cons of minimum wage going up. In retirement care, the raising of minimum wage will take away from the facilities that the patient will be able to use because of the amount of money the workers are getting paid. Companies will not have enough money to be able to spend on their employees, they would have to spend more money on their employees, which would make them have less money to actually spend on their facilities. So the retirement people, the people that live in there, would not be able to have the same amount of resources as, let's just say, people that have the workers have less money. Another con would be raising the minimum wage will potentially decrease the job market and decrease the amount of job openings. This would take millions out into the poverty, and it will take away from, going back to the other example, it will bring them back into poverty and will make people more likely to be homeless and live on the streets. And right here is a model of states with a minimum wage higher than the poverty line and states that are under or the same exact.
Okay, so looking at this through a social lens, we got to look at how this affects the American people. A big thing, going off of Grady's point, is that with the constantly moving minimum wage, or what we want it to move, workers don't have job security, considering that the wage is so low that they can just fire someone, and big companies can just, if you work at McDonald's, they can just fire you and replace you within 24 hours very easily. And what this does is this causes families to have to move often so then they can find better work, find better jobs. And what this does is this leaves lasting social impacts on families because they're never able to truly adapt to their environment and become connected. They cannot play on that sports team. They can't go to a certain school with their friends. It's just a bunch of things that they're never able to truly connect to where they want to be, which ends up hurting their mental health, as you can see with these graphs. But this is over the years. This is the rates of depression and things of that sort and anxiety. They go up periodically with minimum wage as it has not increased with inflation because workers continue to be stressed about not having job security and not being able to connect to their society around them. And then why this change is needed. Currently in the United States, the workforce is not equal. Overall, minimum wage workers are most of the time people of color, women. They're not the normal people that you would think. They're not the white American men that are getting paid more. So if you look at who has minimum wage jobs, it's the minorities that are getting paid less than the minimum wage, which is causing them to not be able to support their families as well, showing that there is inequalities within the workforce and the minimum wage. So this is another reason as to why we need to change this. This is a graph where you can also see that in the 10th percentile, men are getting paid much more than women throughout the years of minimum wage, even though it's supposed to be the same. And so this is another reason why we need to change this.
The cons of the low minimum wage through the futuristic lens is I put a low minimum wage can create a long-term less skilled workforce by having workers in a low-paying job. So for example, I put this image of farmers putting crops in, which shows how this could be a low-paying job for people. And then I also put discourages employers training that leads to fewer job opportunities, which widens inequality and creates a cycle of poverty. If there's already like a family member trying to have create money for their family, they don't have time to go to trainings or go to colleges that can help increase their like level of learning for their job and have better jobs that can have better money. So like for farmers, for example, they don't have any learning. They just go plant food or vegetables, and that's not enough money to like help families not be in poverty. And then the pros of raising minimum wage. Raising the minimum wage could be viewed as a necessary step to ensure families can afford essential goods and services. So how I said in the previous slide, how like families need like training to have better jobs, making sure that those people have can take training and have better jobs could like afford essential goods and services for their families. And I also put raising the minimum wage can lift families out of poverty and could be seen as a investment in the future. Having more families out of poverty can make the economy better, and especially in the US, we have a lot of people that are in poverty because of how much inflation the US has. So making sure we can lift families out of poverty can be very important.
And then backpedaling on what both Garrett and Malia said, and that what Grady said, lifting more people out of poverty would in turn benefit the government as well. Because as shown here, supplement nutrition assistance programs, aka SNAP, take up a lot of government spending, and a lot of the people who rely on these programs are low minimum wage workers. And like Garrett said, a lot of these people are women and people of color. So if we raise the minimum wage, it would help boost these people up and out of poverty, which would also in turn boost them out of reliance for SNAP programs. And this would give the government potentially millions of dollars that they have been spending aiding these people elsewhere that they can spend like benefiting the country as a whole. But however, the more people that are boosted out of poverty could also increase spending for other medical programs because the people who work for these medical programs, their wages would also increase alongside a minimum wage increase. So in that sense, the government spending on these programs would increase.
Fantastic. Okay. Malia, if you had another team member, what other perspectives or limitations could they have researched that would have benefited your group?
I think we could have like if like I had another person, we could focus on like different races or like how different races affect this. Like my team partner said, people of color and like women like there are in poverty, and since like Garrett said how like white men are like more higher in the social class, so like just seeing how like different races or different genders would be in this topic.
Naima, describe an argument from one of your teammates' individual reports that made you think differently about your team's solution or conclusion.
So Garrett's argument was that like raising or keeping the minimum wage low and not raising it would disproportionately affect women and people of color, like he talks about in this slide. And that kind of factored in a lot for like our slides because I kind of wanted to focus on how like that affects specifically would kind of affects all of them. So like I discussed like the women and people of color who are getting uh, paid less like affects government spending on financial aid programs. So I think that kind of influenced the way we went about our presentation and like our conclusion.
Thank you. Garrett, what is a way in which your team's resolution makes you think differently about your own individual research?
A way that our resolution about raising the minimum wage makes me think different about my own research is all the cons that say about how you might lose your job with raising the minimum wage and how the job search will become harder. Like in my mind, after hearing what my other team members have said, it seems like though jobs might go down with raising the minimum wage, it seems like that'll like make it even better and make getting a job more secure and better for everyone else, and make like us going over as a country over the poverty line much stronger. Even though it might be harder to secure a job, but once you do, you're more locked in than you were before.
Fantastic. And Mr. Abel, what is an example of a compelling argument from one of your peers' individual reports that you guys decided to exclude from your team's presentation, and why?
A compelling argument that one of my researchers used was, I'd say, in Garrett's IR essay. He talked a lot about he talked a lot about more like numbers based, and I'd say in our research, in our slides, we didn't really need quite the numbers. We just needed more of like we didn't need the quantitative data. We more needed the qualitative data.
Thank you so much.